Hi friends, and look, Starry Hilder, off-grid. And we've got the wood stove going today, and we got the canner on top of it. And we've got jars of venison heating up. They're heating up because they were just taken from outside. They're a little frozen, so we raw pack them, and we're heating them up in the wood stove. But this is going to be an off-grid reality check video because now that they're heated up, I am actually going to take those jars of venison, yes, and my all-American canner, yes, and I'm going to bring it outside to my outdoor canning center. Really? Really, Starry? Okay, think about it. You got the wood stove going. Why wouldn't you can on the wood stove? Well, here's the reality check of off-grid living. And I want you friends to really think about this if you're going off the grid and you really believe that you are going to be doing all of this canning on that wood stove in the wintertime. Because the reality of it is, there's a couple things that you really need to consider about canning on a wood stove. Okay, reality number one. It's a great skill to have, canning. And knowing how to do it on the wood stove. I've canned many times on the wood stove. I know how to do it, but it is a chore. You have to learn how to regulate this heat on the wood stove. It doesn't make any difference what type of wood stove you have. It takes time to learn how to do it. It takes time to manipulate the heat. And especially if you're using something like an all-American canner, that baby needs to get up to a certain temperature. And it needs to stay up on that temperature, which means you really gotta have that stove stoked up, and your house is gonna be really hot for the remaining of that canning session, be it 75 or 90 minutes, depending if you're doing pints or quarts. So you have to really think about when you decide to undergo the process of canning inside your house. That wood stove has got to be hot. The cooktop is going to have a hotter spot and a cooler spot. You're going to have to find the sweet spot when you are canning. And you're going to have to keep that heat up, like I said, for 75 to 90 minutes. And your house is going to be hot. It's going to be really hot. You're going to be opening windows. So that's like number one reality of canning inside. Again, it's a great skill to know. You should practice it. You should do it. But if you are living day to day in an off-grid home, having it 100 degrees in here is not fun. Number two, the other reality of canning inside your off-grid home on the wood stove is that every time you can, especially when you're venting, it releases a lot of moisture. A lot of moisture goes into the air. And the problem with our setup here, we have a house that is modern, and it's sealed very, very tightly. And when I started canning indoors during the winter, we had moisture problems. We don't have an exhaust fan. There's no exhaust fan over the wood stove. Most people don't have exhaust fans over the wood stove. So all of that moisture went up, and started hitting the vapor barrier. And then we started having dripping from the beams because it couldn't escape. So you could open windows, you could crack windows, but the bottom line is you still have that moisture inside the house, and it has to go somewhere. And if you have a solidly built off-grid house, that is going to become an issue that you really have to be aware of. So, that's kind of the drawback of canning during the winter time on a wood stove. It sounds really novel, but there is a reality of modern day homesteading. Now, when I was canning in my other location, the house, it wasn't built as tight. Let's just put it that way. So when I did can, we didn't have all the moisture problems. But in these modern houses, modern construction, you may find that is going to be a big issue with canning. Starry's off-grid canning setup. You've seen it before, the cylinder, all-American canner, and the cook stove. And yes, I continue to use this setup even in the dead of winter. And it's cold out here, as you can see my breath. Why don't I use that wood stove inside all the time? Well, we just explained why. So now you see, there is a practical reality to living day by day off the grid. And if you friends really want to start making some changes in your life, and you're looking at a cook stove, a wood cook stove, and you're looking at canning on that wood stove during the wintertime, there are some things that you really need to think about. And for modern day off-grid homesteading for us, we really do think about things in a more day-to-day practical sense. And that's why propane is cheap right now. It's readily accessible. We buy the tanks that I can handle, that Mr. Hilder can handle. It doesn't break the bank. This is easily regulated. I can walk away from it, and we don't have to heat up the house to 100 degrees. We don't have to worry about the vapor barrier and the moisture. You know, there's all those things that we don't have to worry about. So that's practical reality with off-grid wood stove canning. So, and you know, here's kind of a disclaimer that I want to throw out there, because you know, there are a lot of channels out there, lots of off-grid channels and homesteading channels that offer advice, and sometimes they make it look really easy. Oh, we're going to do canning on the wood stove today, and it sounds really novel until real life kicks in and you're really off the grid with this wood stove and it ain't working. So really beware. You walk, we talk the talk. This is real life. This is real life. I mean, here's Mr. Hilder. What's he? He's out there in the dead of winter shooting his bow and arrow because he still hasn't gotten any meat for the table yet. This is under our channel. This is real life. We're not playing house. We have to live here and be sustainable. This is everyday living. So you always know when you come to Starry Hilder's off-grid homestead, you're going to get the truth. No frills. Complete honesty. Okay, I got to go in. It's cold, but the canner's beginning to vent. That's good. We're going to give it 10 minutes, and we're going to have some venison for the pantry. All right, God bless.